right side, you're now bumping up against I-20 and the 220 interchange that's just off the screen on the right there. We are one of 3 sites in the country that have been selected or down selected for it's a 1,400 person company in the technology business that's we're throwing a lot at them. It's about a $97 million package to get that organization to come here. But as soon as a year from now, all of that could be fairly well completed because one of the attractive components about Northwest Louisiana and the alignment of federal, state, and local political will is that we can go faster than any other community anywhere in the nation. And then there's a whole bunch of other attractive benefits to doing business in Northwest Louisiana. If you haven't heard Secretary Morey speak about the digital media tax credit, it's a derivative of the movie tax credit. So it's a 35% reduction on labor costs for IT-related work if that work is performed for a customer other than the company that develops that IT product. So if I build it and I consume that product, I don't qualify. But if I build it and I sell that product to somebody outside, then 35% of the labor that's performed on the development of that is given back to me as a tax refund that I can use in the secondary market and sell as a commodity. So that's a pretty big deal. It's also another very attractive component of what we're able to do in Northwest Louisiana. I know that our state is struggling economically, but not to the extent that other states are, and there's no other state in the country that can offer those kinds of incentives, and it's going to be a competitive discriminator for large-scale contractors who want to do federal business to incorporate that into their bidding plan. So a little plug for Secretary Morey, and that's where we'll be. When that lower section that's below the halfway line, which is Highway 80, is completed, that's going to be about 1 million square feet of office space, and we'll have about 2,500 people in that area. Now, none of that is completed except the Cyber Innovation Center, and that's home to about 400 folks. I have a confidence of some of the Fortune 50 companies being here. We should be able to announce that at Mardi Gras next year. It's actually bringing jobs back from India to the U.S. And then I'm hopeful that we'll know by March or April and have the ability to announce the lower right-hand side development. God willing, there'll be a lot more activity out there. Next slide, please. The larger view of that is there's a pink corner that is partly Harrah's Louisiana Downs and partly somewhat undeveloped property going towards Stockwell Place. And the bisection of that is Highway 80 and 220. Below that is the intersection of I-20 and 220. And then if you extended the line of 220 straight south, you would go into Barksdale Air Force Base, which is the lower boundary line on that green, the southern green line. And that we know is going to be in the appropriations bill that Congress is going to, that the President's going to sign, hopefully, within the next 2 weeks, so that Barksdale can build the receiving side of the new entrance into the base that will be built off the interchange of I-20 and 220. And what that does is that facilitates a tremendous amount of transportation infrastructure within the confines of that 3,000-acre zoning district overlay that is the National Cyber Research Park. Now, the pink area is related retail services, so things like hotels and these are higher-end hotels and higher-end restaurants, and retail services like child care and dry cleaning services. And what the zoning district overlay does is it provides us the discretion over what we consider to be appropriate and inappropriate businesses for placement in that park. The other is all zoned for research and development, and the biggest part of that is undeveloped land along the Barksdale property line, and then across Highway 80. So what I'm getting at is that's in the center is hopefully going to be developed relatively soon. And then what we would look to do next is there's some specific opportunities we're looking at that are with agencies who have 3 letters in their names for the southern part of the I-20 component, and then other support contractor activities on the northern part of Highway 80. And that's a lot of geography, I apologize, but if you're interested in what's going on over there, that's how it's going to lay out and how it's going to develop. The next slide, please. This is a slide we created that nobody can see, especially me. That's the Shreveport-Bossier metropolitan area. The brownish area on the right-hand center is Barksdale Air Force Base's 22,000 acres, which is only usable right now to about the extent of 2,000 acres. Without that gate, 20,000 acres can't be opened up and operated. So the gate's a big deal for us. There's a 2-lane road that comes around the top part of that property line, and that's how they access the 600 new homes that have been built out there for the Airmen of Global Strike. So just simple things like getting kids to doctors and getting kids to school is significantly impacted by the distance they have to drive from the east side of Barksdale to get out to a main gate, any of the gates on the west side of the property. The 2,000 acres that's currently developed won't support or sustain any more growth. It's full. So the only way to grow at Barksdale, which is one of the primary missions that I have in terms of BRAC and base realignment and closing Barksdale from ever being on that list, is to increase its capacity and its mission. And so the only way we can do that now is to open up that side of the base. That's why that gate is so important. The rest of it is of interest to people who are looking to locate here because they can see that we have very adequate water, transportation. We're working on the air thing. If y'all are involved in the airport activities, we really need to work on our airport servicing other major hubs that we can get folks in and out of. It costs too much for people to come here, and they hate the fact that they have to take several bumps. So one of the criticisms I've gotten from most of the defense industrial base as well as the federal agencies is you're hard to get to. You just can't get there from here. And if you do, it's really expensive. So that's what this picture is designed to show you, is kind of where we are and where we are in relationship to the rest of the activity and how accessible all that is by interstate and loop traffic. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about education now, because educationally we are failing as a nation, and there's a bunch of information that supports that was generated by the National Academy of Sciences, and a report that was produced in 2005 and revisited in 2010 called Gathering Storm. And if you want to stay up tonight, go read that, go Google that up and read that tonight, because it'll scare the pants off of you. And what it talks about is the fact, and I've got a bunch of information here, I may read some of it depending on time, but it says that our nation no longer puts any money into research and development, and as a result, most of the research and development is moving to China and India, and that 75% of the businesses in the United States who are developing and doing research are doing that work in China and India, and that we're not making any engineers, and that the majority of the PhD holders that we produce out of American universities are foreign nationals and can't work in the national security realm. So most of the people that we're producing, we don't have the ability to use in the areas of concern that we're focused on in the cyber arena. So I find myself talking faster maybe than I could even listen, but I got 15 minutes, so I can slow down. I got more than I can tell you more than you want to know. I promise you about this stuff. So I think the next slide is an excerpt from the Gathering Storm. No, this slide is about, and it's really hard to see, but what that is the names of the the major commands of the United States Air Force. So if you look at how an organizational chart would lay out for the United States Air Force, you've got the Secretary of the Air Force and the Chief of the Air Force, and then you've got major commands that report to those guys. So there's 10 now. That's 9. Prior to Global Strike, there were 9. Now there's a 10th major command. So at the top level organization within the Air Force, we've added a new major command called Global Strike, now headquartered at Barksdale Air Force Base. The far right-hand column is a series of numbers reported by the regions in which those major commands reside. And so the standard deviation on those numbers is pretty broad. It goes from $1.2 billion of regional economic impact to $8.1 billion, and the average of them is $3.35 billion. And just to give you a perspective, the next slide is from the Office of Management and Budget. And what it says is that, this is not my slide, I got it off their website. OMB, Office of Management and Budget, the people who tell you how much money you get to spend as an agency or as a department within the federal government. And it's a $4.4 billion line item. Global Strike is a $4.4 billion line item in last year's budget. And now that we're under continuing resolution, we're still a $4.4 billion line item because Congress hasn't gotten an appropriations bill passed. So just to give you a perspective, now not all of that $4.4 billion goes here. There's 3 bases within Global Strike, so Barksdale and Whiteman and F.E. Warren. And then there's other scattered missile silos around the Northwest. So there's a distribution of those funds, but all the operational training and equipping goes on at Barksdale Air Force Base, so the majority of that funding is going to be consumed for those purposes here in Bossier. And so you add some economic number because of Global Strike to the $750 million a year that Barksdale is already responsible for just as 8th Air Force. Now, a numbered Air Force, there are 3 within Global Strike. That's the next reporting line within an organizational structure that is the Air Force hierarchy. So you got squadrons and wings and numbered air forces and major commands, and then the chief. And so we've got a numbered air force of substantial consequence as well as a major command here at Barksdale. And I tell you that because a lot of people think that what happened at the Cyber Innovation Center was made really pointless or useless because we didn't get what got downgraded from a major command to a numbered command. What happened was a lot of different agencies came out of the woodwork when the Air Force said, we're going to be the cyber domain owners. There are any number of agencies who had significant objection to that. And so what you found now is that the Air Force was told the way you will fit into the overall organizational construct that is the cyber command is you will be a numbered Air Force, and you'll be stationed down at Lackland Air Force Base, which is where most of the network warfighting and electronic warfare and all those activities currently take place. And that's what you'll do. And you'll report as a sub-unified component into U.S. Cyber Command, which is parked now outside of Fort Meade, where NSA is. And you'll be like STRATCOM. We'll borrow resources from you and a whole bunch of other people when we need it. But your primary role is to present those forces to us as U.S. Cyber Command. So that's how that all shook out. There's a whole nother presentation on what the economics of that is, but we came out much, much better with Global Strike than what the others ended up